first, congratulations on the.
Well, thank you very much.
It's a pretty tough road to hold. I mean, this is not just the general election. You had a very, very tough and long, drawn-out primary, and while you worked in politics in a way, working in staffs and for two senators in D.C., were you really prepared for what you had to go through with the gauntlet of the primary before you?
There was definitely a learning curve. It was certainly different being on this side of that sort of political dynamic than where I'd been before. I gained a great deal of appreciation for anybody who gets involved in the politics, and certainly from my former bosses. I got a great understanding. Senator Cornyn used to start out our scheduling meetings for about the first 3 months. Not start out, but sometime during the meeting, he's a very level guy. At some point during the meeting, he just emphasized that I'm taking control of my life again. And I, you're the boss, absolutely. And kind of didn't understand exactly what he meant, but now having gone through on this side, I know completely what he means. It's a very rewarding process, though. And regardless of how the outcome would have been, I mean, clearly we're very fortunate and happy that we won. But we learned a lot about our process, and there just became friends with so many tremendous people here in the district. And again, it's just an honor to go up there to Washington and represent them. It's a humbling responsibility, but one I'm looking forward to.
Obviously the dynamic of the district may have stayed Republican controlled after 2 years with a Democrat in, given the problems Mr. DeLay had coming in. But you're going to a far different Washington than when Tom DeLay left. And I just wonder, right off the bat, there's going to be a challenge while the Texas delegation is pretty strong Republican still, that you're going up against a Democratic-controlled Congress and White House and a Senate across the building from you. As a freshman congressman, what is your approach to that? Knowing that you're the minority party going in right off the bat.
It's certainly going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the majority party does. I mean, they've got the White House now, and they have both houses of Congress, and the American people are going to expect them to lead a different dynamic than they've had the past 2 years since they've been in control of the Senate. The one great thing that impressed me from the get-go about the Texas delegation is while we certainly have our partisan differences on some issues, on the big issues that have a statewide impact are very important. NASA, funding for NASA, recovery here in the Galveston in this area for Mike. No delegation circles the wagons better than the Texas delegation. I just can't tell you how impressed I was when I first started working. If you needed, you could get all 32 signatures, 2 senators at the time, and 30 representatives. And if there was something that was important to the state, it was easily done and done within 24 hours. And no other delegation has that cohesiveness. It's just something unique to Texas. And I look forward to working with those people, working on our side of the aisle as well, to come up with alternatives and legislation that advances our country's future, and again, make sure that our children, our grandchildren, inherit a world that's better than the one that we inherit.
As Congressman, also, what's going to be your top 3 priorities when you get to D.C.?
Well, I mean, the number 1 priority is to build an office and begin the constituent service part right off the bat, and do that second to none. That's sort of something that's not talked about, but it's critically important that the people you represent have access to the office and to the member to help them with the problems of the federal government. Clearly, the aftermath of Ike, that's going to be one of the major things. We'll be working on that hard for, I would guess, for at least the first term I'm up there. And so that's going to be my first priority. And then, legislatively, we were, I think, the things I really want to make sure is the tax cuts of 2001 and 2003 are still extended and hopefully made permanent. Given the crisis we're having in our economy right now and the challenges we're facing, I don't think this is the time to raise taxes, particularly just in automatic manner as they would do right now. And I really, want to get up there and fight for NASA as well. There's some big challenges coming with the Johnson Space Center, our manned space flight program. When the current plan, as you know, TJ is to stop flying the shuttle here in 2 years once we complete the space station and transition to this, the next generation vehicle, the Constellation, the Orion capsule and the Ares booster. And that's, I'm very concerned about that gap where we're going to depend on foreign countries, Russia in this case, to put our astronauts up in space to get them to and from the space station that the American taxpayers largely built, funded, and paid for. And we just, anything we can do to minimize that gap and ensure that our manned spaceflight program maintains its preeminence in the world. And there's certainly countries, not just the Russians, but you've seen in the news lately, the Chinese have, they've had astronauts down doing orbital missions. They're talking about going to the moon. I believe it was the Indians sent a probe up to map the moon. So it's the competition. There's nations out there, developing nations like that are going to have economies that can support that. And we need to again make sure that NASA, that the United States never loses that edge in manned spaceflight. Not only is it important scientifically, but there are national security implications as well.
I'm glad you brought up NASA early on, because for this county, at least for the part of your district that comes into that is a huge issue.
Yep.
It was one which Congressman Lamson championed first time around. Second time, it seemed to be an area that the two of you agreed on.
We did.
They're on the campaign trail, almost in lockstep in many ways. And when it came to the vote, actually, you saw a lot of that shift in precincts that are kind of NASA dominant that went for him because that was the known factor. So you seem to make an emphasis on. I think it was helpful for folks to know that you wanted to be an astronaut at some point.
I did. That was, that's, didn't want to be a lawyer. I thought if I could do anything in the world, that was sort of the first adult decision I did. It's like, I would love to be, having grown up, in the shadow and gone to school with the kids who's, the Musgrave kids and the Carr kids and all the names, Fred Hayes, who was one of the Apollo 13 astronauts, and everybody remembers that incredible story of how we saved that mission, brought those three. His son played on my brother's soccer team. I remember my dad, pointing at him, that's Fred Hayes down there. Wow, Fred Hayes there. And it was one of those, and that's one of the great powers of NASA that you can't quantify, but just the inspirational value of it. A guy like me, growing up in the shadow of those people and saying, that's what I want to do. If I can be a part of that future, man leaving this planet, which ultimately is going to be our destiny sometime in the future. I'd love to have been a part of that, and it's still there. I mean, boy, it was knocking on doors and stuff in the district. We run into NASA employees, and they're excited about the future and the new mission. And they're excited about the space shuttle, but boy, they're going back to the moon again. They're looking for that to happen, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that they have the resources they need to do it again, minimize that gap where we won't have the capability to put our astronauts in space. Actually, we're supposed to have a launch.
Yeah, I got this weekend got delayed with the weather, or what? There was at risk of a cold front.
Friday was supposed to be the launch.
Touching back in again, obviously the landscape has changed when you get up to DC.
Yep.
And it comes into the politics does play in some part of that. Do you see this as Pete Olson, the Republican, going up, Pete Olson, the bipartisan guy, going up, or have you even thought of that process?
I mean, I see it as Pete Olson, the representative of the people of the 22nd District of Texas, going up there. And, I mean, that's who I represent, that's who I work for. And I'm going to go up there. I've got, a core set of values that I think we've communicated to them, less government, lower taxes, strong defense. We certainly need to have an energy policy, make that a national strategic priority that weans our dependence on foreign oil. And it seems like, the administration is talking about, the new administration is talking about doing some of that. So I found that encouraging. I'm sure we'll have some differences on how to get that done. But the fact that they're talking about it early on is important, because as we've known throughout our history, when I was a little guy, 16-year-old, first had his license in '79, one of my jobs was to take Mom Suburban and get in the line at Mr. Gordon's gas station after the Shah had fallen, and we went through that oil embargo and the prices shot up. But then when the prices come down, we tend to let our guard down